Hello and welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct, the show where two British brothers talk all things NFL. I'm your host, Dom Corbs, and I'm joined with my co-host, Nick Corbs. Nick, how are you feeling?
Doing good, Dom. First week back at uni, getting into the swing of things, and just had a lovely red zone on Sunday and ready to talk about it.
Well, the first week back at uni is, for all our listeners, is why we didn't have our week one NFL season review, but we will have our week two review, which is this episode right here. But before we do, Nick, before we talk about what we're going to talk about, I got this new Texans jersey, right, which you can see very nice, the new one, the white one. I got Nico Collins on the back. What number does Nico Collins wear?
Nico Collins wears 14.
No. Less.
I'm not sure. He balled out for me in fantasy last night, but I could not tell you his number.
Less than 14.
13, 12, 11.
One more, 12. Okay, he wears 12, right? He wears 12. This is what I got from Fanatics.
21.
Yep, they sent me 21. Collins 21. How mental is that? I opened it up and they've got the bloody numbers the wrong way round. I've got a Collins 21 jersey. So
are you going to send it back?
No, because it's useless to them. They don't want it back. They can't sell it. It's useless. So to be fair, they've sorted it. There was a nice woman on Twitter who I was talking to. She helped me out. She sorted me. But mental. Some bloke in the stock room just going, yeah, mate, looks good to me. Let's just send that out. Like, I was furious, absolutely furious. But anyway, we've got a loaded episode to go through today. We're going to talk about the things that myself and Nu find the most interesting and the most important from week 2 of the NFL season. And we're going to start. Well, that includes things like talking about Tua, talking about Bryce Young, the new Saints offense, talking about a couple of the rookies, like maybe Bo Nix and Caleb Williams, but definitely Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors. So a lot to talk about in this episode, Nu. But the first thing we have to kick this episode off with is talking about Tua Tagovailoa and the head injury he sustained on Thursday Night Football.
Dom, it is just horrible. He's 26 years old, his whole life in front of him, and he's got 4 concussions. And when I mean 4 concussions, these are, they said on the commentary, it's in the fencing position. These are injuries to the brainstem. These are not just light taps on the head. These are not concussions that you get in rugby or, not that any concussion is good, but concussions that you can live with. These are life-altering injuries, Dom. And he really has to consider retiring at this point. Well, what do you think?
I completely agree. I mean, so this is his 4th serious concussion in 3 years, and he's meeting with neurologists. And there was a report which said he won't decide based on quote unquote public opinion whether or not he should retire. And there's been a bit of a pushback I've seen from some people being like, oh, you're not doctors, you shouldn't talk about this. You're not in the room with the player. La la la. I think that we as fans have every right to say that we don't want to see a player have his life cut short on the field, essentially. But it's not a bad thing, I don't think, for us to tell Tua to consider retiring as fans. We don't want to see a player's life ruined. You said yourself, he's 26 years old. He's playing a game that he loves playing and is making millions of dollars in doing so. It's not easy for a 26-year-old making millions of dollars to walk away from the game that he loves. He needs people, fans, to be the ones to tell him, hey, look, you should think about hanging it up. The Dolphins are paying him a lot of money. Are they going to say he should walk away? I hope they do. And we've already seen the coach, Mike, what's his name? Mike
McDaniels.
Mike McDaniels, thank you. Mike McDaniels has already come out and said, that's completely up to him, which is great. But I think the Dolphins and the league have a duty of care towards these players. And if they don't force Tua to sit down, and obviously look, that will be based on medical opinion and they'll get their doctors in, but I just don't know if I really trust the league to handle head injuries, given the history of how they've dealt with head injuries in the past.
Well, Dom, this meeting with the neurologist for Tua is huge because if the doctor says he cannot play and therefore he has to retire, he still is owed his obligational contracted money. He still gets paid. If the neurologist says you're allowed to play again, but if you get one more, you might not remember your kid's names by you're 40, and he retires, he doesn't get a penny. And it's completely unfair. It's completely unfair by the league. But the Dolphins are not going to give out $190 million in cap space for charity. And it's quite unfortunate. You say, he has all this decision. Not really. If someone's paying you all this money that could go to your family, Mike McDaniel said that Tua is the quarterback of his family and you should think about them while making the decision. Well, I'm sure Tua's thinking about the money in that aspect as well. So I think the league needs to make something in place that if you do suffer these head injuries, you shouldn't have to retire to put your family first and then yourself first, and then you're looking after your family second. The league should compensate Tua for these head injuries.
Yeah, I mean that's it, right? Is that the NFL, like any job, is a business, and they're going to look out for their own business. Like the Dolphins are going to look out for their side of the business. The NFL are going to look out for them. And I mean, this is where I kind of disagree with what you said, Neil. I mean, Tua's already made over $70 million. So that is generational wealth, and I appreciate that he's staring down the barrel of triple that, or like double that, rather, like 140 million plus, whatever it might be from his current contract. But that's why I think you should walk away. You've got $70 million there. Like, and really the money, I completely appreciate the kind of the bind that he's in terms of there's all this money on the table. I can transform not just my kids' lives, but my grandkids' lives. I completely get it. But that's why someone's got to be on his team, from his sidelines being like, it's not worth it. The extra million is not worth it when you can't remember your family's names. And that's the thing, is you're talking about, like, the league should do things. Like, I have some questions about kind of this whole scenario. Why was Tua not wearing a Guardian cap, first of all? Now, I know people are always like, oh, it looks silly. JJ Watt came out and he was like, I wouldn't wear one. And the Guardian cap, I think, raises a really interesting dilemma for the league, because if it does work, then they're kind of admitting that the helmets that players are currently wearing are not the safest they can be. And if they don't work, then why are they wearing them at all? I think we can go with the assumption that they do work, right? Even if it's 5% reduction in the severity of a head injury, or one happening at all, they should wear them. Or at least players with a head injury history like Tua should be forced to wear one by the league. Yeah, they look silly. Don't get me wrong. I hate how they look. It looks ridiculous out there. But it pales in comparison to a player having to be like stretchered off, or seeing the fencing thing coming out again when his like hands are frozen. Like, that's worse. And I just can't believe that more players are not going to wear the Guardian cap. Like, if you've had, like, I think there should be a rule where if you've had like X amount of concussions, you should have to wear the Guardian cap. It's not up for debate.
I completely agree, Dom. And I think the NFL is almost trying to make them look silly in a way. They can make them look good. They can make them look cool if they really wanted to. If every player had to wear Guardian caps would look cool. They would find a way to modernize it and integrate it with the helmet. I don't really think they care about it, Dom. I really don't.
No, I agree. But that's things that play, like, most of the NFL are young men in their physical prime earning quite a bit of money, right? Like, it's very hard to turn around to those people and then say, hey, you've got to wear this thing which makes you look stupid. Like, a lot of the NFL is about, like, field swag. How do you look? Do you look good? Do you play good? Like, there's an undeniable element of the NFL, of football, where you want to look good. You want to look good on the field. And the Guardian cap takes away from that massively, undeniably. Like I said, it looks ridiculous. But if it works, which I think we can assume it does work, why is it not enforced more rigorously than it currently is being, rather than just being like, 4 players have opted in, like a Colts tight end, a Steelers offensive lineman, and 1 running back? Like, it should be, every position, everyone in the trenches, offensive and defensive line, should have to wear them. And if they don't do anything, well, then we need to other things need to be done, basically.
I completely agree, Dom. And also, I just want to say, all love to Tua and his family and anyone affected by these injuries, because they are really horrible to watch and, pretty horrible to experience, I can imagine. So,
oh yeah, they're brutal. I mean,
love to Tua.
Yeah, the film Concussion, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. Like, it will completely change your view on how the league and how sport in general treats concussions, because they're really, really serious things. They should not be messed around with. But then, on to our next topic. We're going to talk about probably one of the worst teams to ever grace the NFL, and that is the 2024 Carolina Panthers, led by second-year quarterback Bryce Young.
Well, so Dom's playoff prediction, Carolina Panthers, haven't quite got off to the hot start, as you can imagine.
Oh, God. I've been defending them all off-season, dude. I've been defending them all off-season.
Howl of a take. But unfortunately, the Bryce Young experiment is over. I'm sorry, he's done. I do not see a career for him with the Carolina Panthers in the NFL. And the reason why I say that is, people draw to Peyton Manning throwing 23 picks in his rookie season. Or, countless examples of players really struggling to get going. But he has shown no promise, no talent, nothing to make his team better. And I understand he's not been put in the best situation. But take someone like Kyler Murray, also a first overall pick. Before him was Josh Rosen, who was thrown to that situation, and it was sink or swim, and he sank. He did not make it, but Kyler was able to go against the odds, the multiple coaches, and we saw this weekend be almost an MVP level quarterback. Bryce Young has shown nothing. He's shown no development, no sparks, no athleticism, probably the weakest arm in the league. And unfortunately for him, he seems like a lovely guy, but it's over.
I think that's the hardest thing with Bryce Young, is that at the moment we're looking at a quarterback who none of his positive traits have translated from college to the NFL, but all of his negative traits haven't just translated, they've been doubled, they've been exacerbated, they've been made even worse. And I think Bryce Young in this offense are playing just about as bad a football I've ever seen any team play football. Young, frankly, is in a tailspin right now. He is checking the ball down on 3rd and long and then throwing a turnover on 1st and 10. Like, he's playing the game the wrong way around. He's terrified of throwing a pick. So is insanely conservative, but then will throw a pick the following drive. He had 15 passing yards in the first half yesterday. That's frankly untenable. He's throwing the ball new. There's a compilation on right now on Twitter from Austin Gale, who used to be at PFF, of Bryce Young having to jump while checking down the ball to try and throw it over the line and over defensive linemen. Like, it is insane. He's hopping like a rabbit out there. And even when he's not jumping, he's on his tiptoes. And I understand that he has to be on his tiptoes to see over the offensive line. And a lot of quarterbacks are on the balls of their feet when they're surveying the field, right? It keeps them twitchy. It keeps them kind of ready to move. That's completely understandable. But when you're actually throwing the ball, you need to have your studs firmly in the ground to give you a good base to throw, to get your hips moving, to really put power and velocity and accuracy into your pass. And he's on his tiptoes. He's out there like Michael Jackson when he's, like, woohoo. He's on his, like, it's insane. Like, and all of his throws, as a result, are inaccurate. They have no velocity behind them. A quarterback with an already very weak arm is made even weaker, and he's just chucking ducks to the defense. I honestly, it's torturous to watch the Carolina Panthers, but there's almost like an aspect of humor to it, because I know whenever it's 3rd and long, I almost called him Derek Carr there, which is ironic. I know that Bryce Young is going to check the ball down, and I know on 1st and 10 he's going to turn the ball over.
Yeah, Dom, I completely agree. And when you look at other quarterbacks of a similar stature, I've already mentioned Kyler Murray, and you could even argue Baker Mayfield, who's probably 6'1", 6 foot and change, maybe.
Yeah, 6 foot and change.
Yeah, so Kyler, like me, Kyler relies on his.
He can host the pod. You've got to be over 6 foot to host the pod.
So Kyler relies on his athleticism to counteract his height. He's able to hold the ball in the pocket. Yesterday he held the ball for 9 seconds, which is the 3rd ever longest time for a touchdown. But he's able to do that with his athleticism. Baker's able to do it with just the pure dog in him. Standing up in the pocket, being brave, navigating around the pocket. Bryce Young can't do either of those things. He looks like, Dom, if you put me or you out there, I was asked, okay, play quarterback in the NFL, I would probably have more confidence than Bryce Young does right now.
I think you definitely would. And I think the Kyler Murray pull is a really good one, because I think the thing that has not translated in any way is Bryce Young's athleticism and his ability to kind of make defenders miss and make plays out the pocket. Like, even against the Saints, he was able to escape the pocket on an occasion, but then had no confidence to hit Thielen deep down the field. Like, he is playing quarterback essentially with a hand tied behind his back in terms of the tools that he has at his disposal. And I think the most damning statistic out of the plethora that there are available for the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young right now is that they have converted 1 3rd down drop back from 20. That's what they're on right now, 1 from 20. If you have 1 from 6 in a game, you've had a bad game. 1 from 20 over 2 weeks. If you can't convert on 3rd down, your team is dead. Your team is done. And the Carolina Panthers, after just 2 weeks, finished, cooked.
Yeah, completely. And Dom, I feel so bad for, any German listeners we have. The fact that it's Giants versus Carolina in Munich. Reparations for World War II, I've seen it be called. That is going to be an absolute shit show.
Yeah, that's going to be an absolute howler. That's going to be a real howler. But I think from one tail-spinning quarterback to a quarterback who is seeing his career on an insane upward trajectory this late in the day, we've got to talk about this Saints offense and the complete revival it has had under new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak.
But Dom, I don't think me and you. I like to say we know a bit about our NFL. We follow it, we like it. None of us saw this coming. Nobody saw the Saints being a good team. I'm probably Derek Carr's biggest hater. No one hates Derek Carr more than Saints fans, and he's scored on 15 consecutive drives. I understand they've got a new OC, but their skill positions are the same. They drafted a new tackle, but I don't quite understand how they are so much better. They're two completely different teams.
I think for me, both really the Panthers and the Saints are two sides of the same coin. And for me, they really show the importance of coaching as king in the NFL. If you've got a competent quarterback, which I'll begrudgingly admit that Derek Carr is, then and you have a great play caller or a great offensive mind, and it really is an offensive mind. You want to have one of those kind of top offensive coaches in the league. You've got a quarterback that can operate in offense, and you've got an offensive mind that really knows how to cook one up. You're onto a winning formula, and I think you're right to point out that the Saints they're the same team. And Clint Kubiak has completely revolutionized them. He was the old passing game coordinator under, unsurprisingly, Kyle Shanahan. And the Shanahan and McVay coaching tree is just taking over the league. And rightly so, because offense is king in the current NFL. And you want one of these guys. There's that meme, Sean McVay's hairdresser is going to get an offensive coordinator job. And honestly, he should. Those two guys, Shanahan and McVay, have forgotten more about offense than anyone will ever learn in their lives. And he's got Derek Carr, like you said, Nu. Like, if Derek Carr has zero haters, then I'm dead. Like, he's got him looking like a different quarterback. And this is what's so interesting. And this is what I like. I find it baffling sometimes that the NFL, the NFL's called a copycat league, but there are some teams which refuse to just steal a winning formula. So last year, the Saints were last in play action. They ran it 14.4% of the time. Rock last, 32nd in the NFL. This year, over 2 games, they've ran it 52% of the time, which is first in the NFL. Now, obviously, there's more to an offense than simply running play action. But if you're not using play action in the modern NFL, you are playing at a disadvantage because it works. Like, people always think, you got to establish the run for play action to work. That's proven to not be the case. Like, linebackers have keys which they have to address before. Like, if there's a threat of the run, they take a step forward to do so. Like, it gives you those margins in the NFL which massively, massively benefit the offense. And we saw the Saints with Derek Carr, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, nice players, but not elite, put the Dallas Cowboys to the sword in Jerry World. They made the Cowboys offense look like a JV team. Like, they had Alvin Kamara blowing the dust off his career. They were using motion, play action, deep crosses. Like, you can see that classic Shanahan coaching tree stuff, and you can see why it's taken over the league.
I completely agree, Dom, and I think it's really important that you highlight Alvin Kamara and Rashid Shaheed, because Kamara's career, I thought, was more or less done. I thought he might go to another team, get 2 good years, maybe a nice receiving piece, bit of that, bit of there. But, anyone who's played against him in fantasy this week can assure you that is not the case. He seems like a completely new player, and for someone who's in year 8, year 7, year 8, year 9 of their career at running back, shouldn't be the case. And Shaheed probably went undrafted in most leagues, was a really under-the-radar player, nice wide receiver 3, now is out-snapping Olave and out-targeting Olave. I don't know how he's done it, Dom, but there's some dust in San Francisco, and I want some. Please.
Yeah, all we got to do, if you first of all, I think Kubiak is gone after this year. He's done. He's gonna. I should take. I should pick him up is the Bears, and we'll talk about the Bears in a little bit later. But this is the issue which teams will find themselves in. Do you let a talent like him go when you've obviously he can't progress to being head coach because the Saints have a head coach, but teams should really sit down and have a good long hard look and think, okay, what's really going to benefit us long term? Like, should we keep the elite offensive mind, or should we kind of stay with our classic head coach, who's a bit of a CEO type, might be a defensive mind, yada yada yada? Like, you want offensive stability in the NFL. If you find a good offensive coordinator, you need to keep him. That's what I'm worried about with the Texans. Is that obviously we've got D'Amico Ryans, and I'm not saying I want D'Amico Ryans as our head coach, but the drawback of having a defensive mind is that there is going to be a rotation of offensive coordinators, because as soon as they're good, they're going to go. So the Saints, I think, really should think long and hard about if they want Kubiak to leave, because he is going to leave at the end of this year. And it's not that their other head coach has done a bad job or whatever that might be, but it's just, if you've got that talent in the building, I don't think you let him go.
I agree, Dom, but I would put a bit of caution in there. As a Giants fan, we had Kafka come over from the Bills, who was the Bills quarterback coach. Seemed to really revitalize the Giants offense. But all it takes is 1 year of film to figure you out. I'm always so cautious of 1 year coordinators. Look at Canales at the Panthers, for example. 1 year coordinator showed really good promise with Baker, panic hire, and it's bad for him and it's bad for the Carolina Panthers. So I think I agree with you completely, Dom, but I'd be a little bit cautious. I'd pump the brakes slightly if I was a potential team looking to hire.
I think that, to be fair, that's a good point. I mean, even McVay has stumbled in his offensive masterclass in LA. So I think it's a good cautionary tale. You're right, but I do think that that having offensive stability and having a consistently good offense is how you win in the NFL. And with Kafka, the nuance there is that apparently it was Dable that was always calling the plays, and Kafka kind of called them like once or twice, then was relieved of play calling duties. But you're right, like it's a more nuanced point than you just want an elite offensive mind. Absolutely, like that. It does come in swings and roundabouts in terms of, can defenses figure it out, and they always probably will. But it's an arms race, and if you've got that mentality to you as an offensive coordinator, you can also out scheme them when they work you out. It's a game of chess. But I think the bottom line with the Saints here is that they've put up 47 and 44 points in 2 weeks, which is genuinely insane. Like the New Orleans Saints with Derek Carr putting up 47 and 44 points in the first 2 weeks. One was against the Panthers, short, fine, whatever, JV team, but 44 points in Jerry World against the Cowboys. And I loved, just quickly before we move on, I loved what they did dealing with Micah Parsons. Obviously their tackles are a slight problem. Trevor Penning is not very good, and the rookie.
Talisi
Fuanga, absolutely. He's obviously a rookie, and rookie offensive linemen get embarrassed by players like Micah Parsons. What they did was they essentially sent like 2 tight ends to block him at all times. Like the first one would just chip him, the second one would then try and cut him, and the first one would come back round to block him again. And Parsons said afterwards that it was like trying to run through a maze, that he was getting hit left, right, and centre. He wasn't getting like properly blocked, but he was just getting disrupted the whole time. And I think that was such a clever way to disrupt one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Not even give him the opportunity to try and embarrass your O-line. Just send 3 players his way, have the first guy chip him, the second guy chip him again, and the third guy try and cut him. In that time, you've gotten rid of the ball anyway. So I thought that was a really, really interesting way of trying to neutralize one of the league's best players.
Oh, that's really interesting, Dom. I actually didn't pick up on that, but that's a really good take. It probably shows the skill that the new OC has.
Yeah, it was so cool to see. I suspect more teams will do that. Obviously, like the counter punch there is to move them inside, which Micah Parsons can do. But yeah, if you can, kind of almost have a numbers win. Obviously, you sacrifice those 2 players in the passing game. But when you're a run first team like the Saints currently are, then you can kind of commit those bodies to that. But that moves us on then into talking about great offensive coordinators. Liam Cohen in Tampa Bay has Baker Mayfield looking at the moment like a top 10 quarterback in the league. And you know what, New? It's about goddamn time. Let Baker bake, baby.
Yeah, well, the fact that the current MVP race is Derek Carr versus Baker Mayfield would have sent 2016 me into a coma. But he looks great, Dom. He always has looked good, but Baker Mayfield's a confidence player, and I've never seen him play with this much confidence. He doesn't care, but in a good way. He's not afraid. He takes risks. He's stepping linebackers. He's doing smelling salts. Like, he is him, quite literally. And I'm such a big fan. I'm really here for it.
I'm also so here for the Baker Mayfield redemption arc. I've been a patient man. He's literally my favorite player ever in the NFL. Like, I love Baker Mayfield. I've got a Browns Baker Mayfield jersey. I've got this behind me. Like, I like Baker Mayfield is the player that got me into the NFL. Like, that was I loved watching his highlights. I thought he was such a cool guy. Like the highlights, and I just think that you nailed it, Nu. He's a confidence quarterback. He has been his whole career, which is why it's been so difficult for him. He's had 8 different offensive coordinators in the 7 years he's been in the league, which is insane. You got to learn a new playbook. There's different timings, cadences, there's different motions, different formations, player personnel. Like to learn an offensive playbook takes years. Like even in your first year, you're still learning it. Like the ability to have a playbook. Obviously, they change every year because teams have the tape. But like for the most part, there's a lot of similarities and they stay fairly the same. Things are called different things. Might be different formations from same plays, but whatever. But to have his best offensive coordinator now be Liam Cohen in Tampa Bay. I was really worried about him after Dave Canales left, but clearly I didn't need to be. Like Liam Cohen is also from that Shanahan McVay coaching tree. Again, unsurprisingly, and that offensive scheme. I love when the scheme makes the quarterback's life as easy as it can be. Baker Mayfield is throwing to open receivers for the first time in his career, and that's the thing with Baker. We saw even in this game that he still has that turnover in him. Just chucks it, where like an ill-advised throw, he doesn't quite have the accuracy, throws it into double coverage and it gets picked. But he bounced back. Like he beat the Detroit Lions, many people's NFC Super Bowl picks in their own stadium, in their backyard. And he's got good confidence now, or I'd say great confidence. Like you said, that move on the linebacker, I just loved it. But you got Baker Mayfield stepping up into the pocket, rolling sideways to buy time for the pass, and then sidearming it to a receiver 2 steps. Like it's beautiful. It's beautiful football, and he knows the weapons. It's his second year there. He knows he's got Chris Godwin. He knows he's got Mike Evans. He's got good chemistry now with the players in his offensive line. I am so here for Baker Mayfield cooking.
Yeah, and Dom, I mentioned earlier in the pod his bravery. He got sacked 4.5 times by one player, 4 times in one quarter. If that was me, I would be too scared to get back on the field. But he doesn't care. Again, he stands in the pocket. He's not afraid to get hit, and he's not afraid to make mistakes. And that's what you want in a franchise quarterback. And Baker's been up, he's been down, but I finally think he's here to stay.
I love it. I'm so here for it. And that leads on to a tiny little side note here, which I want to talk about, because you mentioned the player that sacked him 4.5 times. Now, a lot of other places like PFF and I would count it as 5 sacks because the NFL counts sacks ridiculously because they got to share it. But Aiden Hutchinson is the best pass rusher in the league right now. And I don't say that lightly. Like, obviously, we can count previous seasons and people, me included, I would have Micah Parsons and I would have Myles Garrett over him. But the step that he's taken this year in just 2 games has been insane. He has 18 pressures over 2 weeks. He had 11 last week. He has a 42% pass rush win rate. Like, Aiden Hutchinson is a one-man wrecking crew at the moment. He's at that wide 9 position, which means he's lined up really far outside the offensive tackle, and he's got all that space to work with. His speed, his motor. He's got the highest motor, I think, in the NFL right now. He simply does not give up on a play. Like, Aiden Hutchinson is always in it. It doesn't matter if he's blocked or chipped or anything. Like, he will not stop working until either the quarterback has thrown the ball or, more ideally for him, he's on top of said quarterback. And he is just feasting in Detroit.
Dom, you could be more right, and the only person who's going to be fuming about this is Tony Khan and the Jacksonville Jaguars. That Trayvon Walker pick was bad at the time, and it ages day by day. But as again, film doesn't lie, and film did not lie last night. He was sensational, game wrecker, game changer, and even though it was in a losing effort, the Lions' offense was sputtering, the secondary was sputtering. He kept them in that game, and as a D end, I completely agree, Dom. He's probably front runner for Defensive Player of the Year at the moment. Obviously, only 2 games in, but that is really a career-defining game for Aiden Hutchinson.
Yeah, he's just so good. And that Trayvon Walker pick, man, like, oh my good grief. Like, how Hutchinson wasn't first overall in that draft, I will never know. Like, genuine insanity. Like, he was the best player by a mile. The Lions got an absolute steal. And it also, as a side note to you, Nu, makes probably the biggest fraud in the NFL, Kayvon Thibodeau, look even worse.
He's had a terrible start. Him and Brian Burns have combined for 1 pressure in 2 games.
Thibodeau's in witness protection. He's not done anything since. He's one of the worst players in the league. I'm not even joking when I say that. He's got one of the worst pressure rates as a defensive lineman in the league. He's terrible.
Well, Dom, this is just making me sad. So if I could talk about something that's a little bit happy as a Giants fan, the rookie wide receivers. And Malik Neighbors especially. I'll talk about Neighbors if you want to talk about Harrison or Thomas, but I'll start with Neighbors. He looked electric. He looked exactly how I saw him on film. And oftentimes when someone transitions from college to the NFL, there's a different play style, they maybe in a different system. He still looks like he's running against college corners. He's just that good. Unfortunately, he did have a terrible drop that basically lost the Giants the game. But we're not going to the playoffs. I would much rather see those flashes than not, basically. And I think he had an absolutely fantastic game.
Well, I think it was more than just a flash. I mean, he had 10 receptions for 127 yards and a touchdown. And his next gen stats chart, which shows where he ran the routes from and how far he went for yards after the catch, is a thing of beauty. Like, he's all over the offense, onto offensive formation. He's lined up attached to the line of scrimmage, out wide, in the slot, in motion. Like, he's exactly as advertised, in the sense that he is an explosive, dynamic playmaker, either at all three levels of the field, with the ball in his hands, at route running. He's just so good. He is so good. Like, I'm almost annoyed that I wasn't even more high on him. For me, he was my wide receiver 2 ahead of Rome Odunze, and I'm very glad about that, I think, so far. And obviously it's early days. I'm not doing a victory lap just yet, but seeing what Neighbors is able to do and seeing his game translate as easily as it has from the college level to the NFL is amazing. I mean, I think what sums it up is that Malik Neighbors had 127 yards, and the other Giants receivers collectively had 51.
Yeah. He is the Giants offense. And Don, we spoke about this in our prediction video. We knew this was going to happen. I'm the same as you. I knew it was going to happen, but I'm still quite surprised that it has. We knew that Neighbors was going to be skewed the board. He was my Rookie of the Year pick. He was your Rookie of the Year pick. But even so, doing it so early on in the year is so, so impressive. And the Giants front room has not done great in recent years, but they've absolutely smashed this pick.
And I think that's what's so good about Neighbors, is that obviously they'll come at this point, defenses will be like, you know what, let's just double Neighbors and let Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton try and beat us, or Devin Singletary try and beat us. But that's what's great about Neighbors, is that his usage means that we can't always be doubled. You can get him on a jet sweep. You can get him on you can get him in motion, an orbit motion. You can get him on a short motion. You can do things, having the back of bunches. You can do loads of things as an offensive coordinator to scheme him single coverage, by multiple different ways. And for more traditional wide receivers, like let's say Marvin Harrison Jr., who we're going to talk about in a second, that is more difficult. And I think with Marvin Harrison Jr., we saw that in week 1. Like, okay, the Cardinals were moving the ball at will in the run game because the Bills kept coming out and nickel to them, coming out with extra offensive linemen. So they were getting like 5 yards per carry. They were running the ball. They didn't need to pass it. The coach came out and said that Marvin Harrison Jr. was essentially being kind of like doubled, which wasn't strictly speaking true. He was just trying to obviously protect his quarterback and protect his rookie wide receiver. But he had a coming out game. All those people that were, I think it was more a meme that people were worried about his top speed. I don't think I actually ever saw someone really questioning it, because we have football tracking data in college. Like, we know Marvin Harrison Jr. is fast. He doesn't need to run a 40-yard dash for us to know that. But everyone's like, oh my God, he only reached 16 miles an hour in his first game. Like, we literally have data to know that he's not slow. But anyway, he had 4 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think for me, obviously having Marvin Harrison Jr. on the pitch and getting those deep targets and being the player he promised to be is brilliant. But what I, as someone that has backed the Chargers, has backed the Cardinals and Kyler Murray for a long time, is I loved seeing that he was that missing piece in that offense. Like, having him there made everyone else better. He was like a value add for the whole offense. James Conner was running the ball well. Kyler Murray was running the ball well. He was throwing it really well as well. Trey McBride had 6 catches for 67 yards. Michael Wilson had a couple nice catches. Like, the whole of the offense came alive. And that's kind of like the antithesis of what happened with Malik Neighbors, which kind of like almost like killed the rest of the offense. Like, the Cardinals are able to sustain their offense with multiple different playmakers on it. And I love that. Like, you can get your tight end involved in the short area of the field. You can get your running back getting you like 4.5 yards per carry. You can have Marvin Harrison Jr. as the deep threat, whenever you need him. I loved seeing the Cardinals put the Rams to the sword last night. And as someone that has been a Kyler Murray truther from day one, he is a top 10 quarterback.
Well, Dom, all I'm going to say is Call of Duty Double XP weekend starts week 8. So He might go down after that.
Oh, those
But no,
terrible names.
that throw to Trey McBride on the deep out, or on the corner rather,
Oh,
perfect throw.
yeah, like
But Dom,
that.
I want to know if you think this is any cause for concern, because in the first game, Harrison had 4 yards, right?
Yeah.
In the last 3 quarters of the second game, he had 1 target. Basically, this production came in a quarter. Do you think that's cause for concern? And do you think that's something that will happen again? Or is it just, a bit of growing pains?
I think it's a great point to raise because I think the usage of Marvin Harrison Jr. and the usage of Malik Neighbors represents what kind of players they are. Malik Neighbors is that dynamic, quote unquote, modern receiver who you can give the ball to in sort of any situation, jet sweeps, you can hit him deep down the field, he can run slants, he can run posts, like he gets open everywhere. But he's a high volume guy, right? He's going to have 18 targets. He's going to have a lot of short yard catches. Marvin Harrison Jr. is that more traditional wide receiver. He's going to have those. He's a deep threat. He's massive. Like, he's not only a deep threat, don't get me wrong. He is good in short yardage situations as well. I think the Cardinals need to use him more in that instance. But no, I'm not worried about that at all. I just think it reflects the style of receivers that they both are. That Marvin Harrison Jr. has a massive stat line for less catches, and Malik Neighbors is more of that high volume, possession, do it all, gritty, kind of like modern wide receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr. is that more traditional. I'm going to have 4 catches. One of them's going to go for 45 yards. One of them's going to go for 50 yards. I'm going to get a deep touchdown. And I think that it's also good that Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't the Malik Neighbors role in terms of being the sole focus of the offense because they have other offensive weapons. He has an elite quarterback. Well, not an elite quarterback. That's going too far. He has a good quarterback, Marvin Harrison Jr. Malik Neighbors has Daniel Jones and no one else. So, no, I'm not concerned. Are you?
Again, I agree, Dom. I just thought it was quite an interesting, just pattern. And I just hope that, it doesn't repeat itself because I personally am more of a fan of the Neighbors style of receiver. I completely understand what you're saying.
Same.
That there's so many other targets that you'd rather have 2 big ones than 10 medium ones. But I just wanted to see him get involved more personally and more consistently throughout the game. But it's still early days. He's only played 8 quarters of football, and I'm sure we won't see the last of him.
Definitely. We definitely won't see the last of Marvin Harrison Jr., the best wide receiver prospect coming out of college in quite some time. So then if we're not concerned about those 2 players, then are you concerned about either Bo Nix or Caleb Williams?
Well, not so much Caleb Williams, but Bo Nix. Oh my God, Bo Nix looked terrible out there. If you put Tua and Wilson on his back, I wouldn't have been surprised. I genuinely, watching him out there was painful. Did you see the video of the huddle, Dom, when he's calling the huddle?
No.
And he's calling the huddle. The players look around confused at each other. He then looks back at his wrist coach and then has to call a timeout. He's 25 years old, and I understand he's a rookie, but he doesn't know what he's doing. Again, with the flashes, going back to Bryce Young, I don't think Bo Nix is Bryce Young. But Caleb Williams had a bad game, but you can see why he was drafted first overall. He still has that creative potential, still has that arm strength. Bo Nix, wow, he looks absolutely terrible out there, Dom.
I think with Bo Nix, there are harrowing shades of Zach Wilson. I think I'm worried about Bo Nix. I'm gonna put it bluntly. I think his red zone turnovers. He's had 2 in 2 games now. Absolute killer.
Bad ones.
Absolutely killer. Yeah, absolute killer. You're in a 10-point game, 2-score game, 1 touchdown, 1 field goal, and you're just throwing the ball away in the red zone. Like, you just simply cannot do that. And I think with Bo Nix is the team around him is also pretty terrible. I don't know why they got rid of Tim Patrick. That makes absolutely 0 sense to me. I don't know why they don't use Marvin Mims. That makes 0 sense to me. But I think it's time to be concerned already about Bo Nix because he is a 25-year-old quarterback. He shouldn't be going through the same pains that Caleb Williams is going through or the same pains that maybe a Drake May might go through. And it's Bo Nix, man. Like, I think that offense looks anemic. I think he looks almost out of his depth, and I'm concerned.
Yeah, Dom, I think out of his depth is the perfect way to describe it. He just looks, he just doesn't know what he's doing. And I think for other quarterbacks who maybe are given more time, Caleb Williams has got the great core around him. Drake May is sitting behind Jacoby Brissett. The Broncos don't really have anything going for them. They've got Sean Payton, who was a great coach, but like what you said about Shanahan, the time's clearly passed him by. They've got a great defense that's going to keep them competitive, but you're right. He looks exactly like Zach Wilson, even down to the way they walk. They look eerily similar, Dom.
Yeah, eerily similar. And then we'll finish off then with a quick discussion about Caleb Williams. So I think that people are doing a similar thing with Caleb Williams that they did with Bryce Young, which is kind of they're saying like, I have no idea why this guy went first overall. La, la, la. Like, it's dishonest of people to kind of feign like they don't understand why Caleb Williams went first overall. Like, he was rightly the first overall pick, and I think my biggest concern isn't really Caleb Williams, to be honest. I think that last night he started off well. He went 7 for 7 for 81 yards, but he has a really bad interior offensive line. There was no running game. DeAndre Swift had 1.3 yards per carry, and the Texans were just pinning their ears back in the pass rush, and they had 7 sacks. And then Caleb Williams went into hero ball mode, threw 2 interceptions, and that was kind of essentially the game. But my wider concerns are around the Bears as a franchise, really. Why did they keep Eberflus? And why did they hire Shane Waldron? Like, Shane Waldron, I was not blown. I said this on the pod earlier. In one of the previous episodes, I was not blown away by what he did in Seattle. He had 3 offensive weapons in Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and he could not get them going. Last night, DK Metcalf and JSN both had 100 yards receiving, and for the Bears, it's a repeated formula. They did it with Mitch Trubisky. They had the old regime. They fired him after a year. He had to learn the new playbook. They did it with Justin Fields. They had the old regime. They fired him after the year. He had to learn a new playbook. It just seems like they've essentially wasted a year of Caleb Williams, really, to me at the moment. Is that they were a lame duck front office, and they should have been. It should have been a fresh start in Chicago with a new quarterback, with playing a Shanahan offensive system, which would have really played to his advantages in terms of bootlegs and play actions and getting him involved on in the run game to a degree. And I just think they've already, after week 2, they've wasted a year.
I completely agree, Dom. And the Chicago Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer. They're one of the longest tenured franchises in the NFL, and that's a benchmark that's obviously very impressive to get. But average players do it. And that's why there's even talk about Caleb saying he doesn't want to go to the Bears. I don't think that was ever true or anything substantiated to it. But I completely agree. When you have terrible ownership, like in Carolina, as we've previously mentioned, it's just so hard to build a good team, because when there's just complete incompetence at the top, it really, really does trickle down. And I think you're right. I think the year's basically wasted, which ruins my Chicago Bears shout. I still think they'll be somewhat competitive. And you're right. I think they'll hire a new head coach, and Caleb Williams will be fine. The panic meter for me is not even swaying.
Yeah. I'm not worried about Caleb Williams. I am worried about Bo Nix, but I'm not worried about Caleb Williams. I'm worried about the Bears as a franchise. I think Caleb will be absolutely fine in the long run. But yeah, I mean, that's just how it goes, isn't it? Coaching, like I said at the beginning, coaching is king.
Yeah, I also just want to quickly bring up Jaden Daniels, just quickly. I thought he had a good game against the Giants, but I really, really, really do not like Cliff Kingsbury offense.
Yeah.
All he does is throw screens. Why are you drafting a quarterback number 2 if you're going to run that playbook? Danny Dimes could do just as good a job as Jaden Daniels doing that. You're not utilizing his strengths. You're not utilizing his skills. I think just want to say that quickly.
That's fair enough. And a final shout out to Sam Darnold. I told everyone the Vikings were going to be absolutely fine with that JJ McCarthy. Lo and behold, they are, because Sam Darnold is going to revive his career. But I knew that then wraps up our week 2 NFL review. If you don't already, please subscribe to the YouTube. Please follow us on our social medias at Unsportsmanlike Conduct on most things. It's a bit of a combination on different things. But anyway, please like the video, please subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode for the week 3 review. See ya.
See you, Dom.